Now we want to prep the artificial pheasant head for mounting. It's painted. We need to remove some of the excess paint from around where we're going to be gluing on the skin. If we don't remove the excess paint, the glue is not going to adhere to the head. Pheasants, unlike some other artificial bird heads, do not have clear lines where you need to grind to remove that. They do slightly under here, but the rest of the head is pretty much open. You have to rely on reference or experience to know exactly where to make these lines. I'll show you where to do it on this head. And like I said, on other bird heads, it's a lot easier to do. So we're going to use a Dremel with a sharp pointed tip. And we're just going to Dremel right around wherever we want to have the glue and the skin meet the artificial head. One thing that I want to mention when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you go through all layers of paint and primer and get right down to the actual artificial bird head and actually dig slightly into it to get rid of this shiny coat. You want to be right on a good roughed up surface. All right, so we've made a line completely around the beak where we want to put the skin. And now we will drill out a hole in the back of the head for us to put the neck wire into. We don't want to use the original hole that we used for painting. We want to put in a new hole that runs up. And I actually recommend going right through the artificial bird head, right through the top of it. Clear out all the excess. The reason I like to go right through the top is if you don't, a lot of times when you put your glue in, you'll get an air pocket and you won't get a nice secure head. So if you have the hole, you have a little release valve for the glue to come out of. That's pretty much all we have to do to prep the head for mounting. We'll now move on to the final mounting process. Now that we have the pheasant up on our mounting stand, we're going to start by attaching the artificial bird head. So we're going to take the skin and start pulling it back on the neck, exposing our artificial necking. We want to unloop the loop that we had put into the wire. Straighten that out. We want to test our artificial bird head on it. We want to bend it in rough position. Something about like that should work perfect. You can see we have some excess wire hanging out, so we'll trim off some of this wire. Just retest it. Should work perfectly. Now we can hot glue this head onto the neck. Right now we want to hot glue the artificial bird head onto the neck. We want to put enough glue in to kind of fill up the cavity. And then we want to put some glue onto the back side of the head here as well. We want to have a pin or a piece of wire ready because when we push this in, there will be some excess glue coming around the sides. We just want to blend that in everywhere. Pull this off the top, that little ball that comes up. Smooth this excess glue right around the head. It'll help to hold it on. We'll let that set up for about a minute or two while that glue dries, then we'll set the eyes. Now we're going to use a small amount of critter clay to set the eyes. We're going to put a small amount of critter clay in each eye socket. We'll go ahead and push our eyes right into that critter clay. start to sculpt this clay around the eye. Repeat the process on the back side. We are going to add a little bit more clay around the eye just to give it a more normal look rather than being so wide-eyed. Just roll this clay out real thin. We don't need a lot, just a very small amount to kind of even this up a little bit. Repeat the process on the lower part of the eye. Sometimes if you have enough clay there, you don't have to do this at all, but we were a little lean. We're just going to add a little bit more to it. Kind of making an oval shape to the eye. We'll finish sculpting this once we get the skin on. We're just kind of roughing it in place at this point. We'll now repeat the same process on the back side of the eye. The next step is to taxi the skin up around the artificial bird head. Before we completely taxi the skin up, I want to take some of my liquid nails caulking and put a small bead of it running along the bottom of the neck and the top of the neck. That's just going to help when I'm taxiing the skin forward to hold it in place. So we'll start up on the top of the head, running down the neck, and just run a small bead, maybe like a 1/4 inch bead running along the back of the neck. We'll repeat that process on the bottom. You can put a little bit more down here if you want to, depending on how much you need to build the neck out. If you have a lot of extra skin, you can use a slightly bit more. Now, being careful not to get any of that caulking onto the feathers, we want to pull and taxi the skin up around this artificial bird head. Because it's a fall wattled artificial bird head, that should slide right over pretty easily. Now that we have the skin taxied over the head, we're going to start gluing it down. Slightly pull this back. We're going to be using our Zap-A-Gap or super glue, whichever you want to use. I put some into a container. We're going to be using 2 T-pins. One is going to be for putting the glue on the head. The other one is going to be for pushing the skin onto it. We're going to start up on the center, the top center of the head, and work our way down one side, and then we'll work our way down the other side, and we'll attach the bottom, and then we'll come through and get this little corner area. You don't need a lot of glue. You don't want it to start running onto the artificial bird head. Otherwise, that could start taking your paint off. So you just kind of want to keep it in the line that we had scratched out. You can use the tweezers to pull the skin if that's easier, or you can just use the pin. We're going to take this tweezers and start to align this skin back up. Then we'll push it down with this pin right into the glue. You want to make sure that you don't have glue on your fingers when you come out of the artificial bird head, otherwise that will stick and take paint off, and you just have to repaint it when we do the finishing process. Lightly tap on it just to help set that in. We'll repeat the process on the back side as well. I'm going to turn this just so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Again, we want to take our T-pin, put a small amount of glue on it, start up at the top center, work our way down the side. Pull the skin in place with the tweezers and use our pin to lock the skin down. kind of start to groom these feathers in place, align everything together. Now we'll angle the bird upwards so we can attach the skin on the underside of the beak. You can see we did get a little bit of caulking on the feathers here. I'm just going to quickly pull that off before it sets in. Actually, we're going to change the position on this pheasant here a little bit. Make it a little bit easier to attach that artificial skin to it. I'm going to completely flip it upside down, right like this. That'll make it a lot easier to attach that skin to the head. Take our tweezers, pull the skin into place. Taxi that skin forward a little bit. It was being a little difficult to line up correctly. Now that that's in place, we'll flip it back around and work on the two corners. Before we connect this last little part of the skin to the artificial head, I want to take some caulking and fill in this wattle area. I'm going to use one of these curved tip syringes and cut right here to make the opening a little bit bigger. We'll fill this up with caulking. And we want to inject enough caulking into this area just to fill out this wattle area. Just a small amount should do it. Now that we have that caulking in there, we will finish attaching this skin to the artificial head. Push that down nice and snug. Start to smooth out this wattle a little bit. There is a small shot hole right here, so some of this caulking might seep out through that hole. Not super concerned about that at this point. That can be fixed later with epoxy. You want to kind of realign this wattle with the artificial wattles that are inside of it already that were on the head. That looks nice. Now we'll go ahead and set the eye. We want to start with the front corner. Line that up with the center of the eye. Slightly push in. Same with the back corner of the eye. Line it up roughly with the center and push in. We want to come around, start pulling down the bottom eyelash. Going to start shaping that right around the eye. I'm pushing it right underneath this eyelash area, kind of indenting it in to give a little bit of definition. That'll kind of rebuild the natural eye ring that's around the pheasant eye. Repeat that process on the top. And depending on the pose, that'll kind of determine how much you have the eye open. Use your finger to kind of help smooth everything in. Now we're just going to clean out the eye with a little bit of water on this brush, just to remove any caulking or clay that may be on it. You can actually use the brush to help reposition the eye as well if you want it open a little bit more. And we'll actually come back up at the end and make sure these eyes haven't moved and kind of readjust once we have the rest of the body posed. We also want to set up the pheasant's horns, which is this little group of feathers here. We just want to pull these forward. If you remember, we injected some caulking along this whole back area. These are going to embed right into that and hold these up in place. We'll pull these up on both sides, the front and the back. And you can adjust these to whatever level you want, whether you want to have them showing a lot or just a little bit. That's completely up to you. Also, you want to make sure that your ear canal is set into the artificial bird head's ear slot. Just kind of helps to line everything up. Now we'll move on to putting the tail on and setting the wings.